Hi there and welcome back to Wiskunde Juffie. In this series of videos, we are going to be looking at fractions. Now, if you're familiar with my channel and with the content that we do here, then you should know that we've looked at fractions back in 2020. But what makes this series particularly special is I'm going to be doing some revision of grade 3 fractions content, leading you into grade 4 in order for you to get back on track with fractions for term 3 grade 4. So without any further ado, let's get started. Right, so as mentioned, we are going to be looking at some revision of grade 3 content first. So in order for your lesson to be successful when it comes to revision is to know what the learners should have known by the end of grade 3. So if I look at the CAPS document, I know that we have to look at grade 3 content. But what exactly was the child supposed to accomplish by the end of grade 3? Now, we are not going to assume that all the learners in the class have mastered the certain concept. We are not going to assume that all the learners are on the same level, and so we are not going to teach it as if they have completed that, right? And this is why the first revision lessons are so important, in order to start off the learners all on the same level. All right, so let's look at it. What are some of the key concepts the learners had to understand by the end of grade 3? The first of these is equal sharing. What do I mean when I'm talking about equal sharing? Here I'm referring to the learner being able to know, if I have 3 groups, I need to share my whole into 3 equal parts, right? This means that each group has to get the same amount, right? So in other words, whenever I'm sharing, whether it's in 2 groups for myself and somebody else, or I'm sharing it between 3 people or 5 groups or 7 groups, whenever I'm sharing equally. And this just means that each and every person or each and every group should have the same amount or the same size. And then equal sharing also leads us into naming the fractions, right? Being able to name a fraction means you will now be looking at how many equal parts the whole was divided into, and as such, what the corresponding name will be of that fraction. For example, if I have a whole, I cut it into 3 equal parts, I know my fraction name for one part will be a third. If I have a whole, I cut it into 5 equal parts, one part will be called a fifth. Great. So you will link the amount of parts that it was cut into with the fraction name. Also remembering that when we give something a name, when we name something, it's a word. And so there are no numbers in sight. In other words, the learners are not looking at fraction symbols, right? They are not looking at the symbol that looks like this and saying, this is the numerator, this is the denominator, all right? Now, where the misconception comes in is learners might say a quarter or a half. Now, that is also correct, but it just makes it a little bit difficult for the learner to see the link between the amount of equal parts and the name of the fraction. So we are also going to, for example, allow a learner to say, instead of a quarter, you can also say a fourth. Now, the learner is not only naming it according to the amount of equal parts, but we are also going to say how many parts we are referring to. So, the learner could also look at 2/3 or 3/5 or 3/8 or 5/7, for example. So, how many and how many equal parts the whole was cut into. It does link a little bit to numerator and denominator, but we are not saying that. We are not mentioning that. We are just looking at 2 things. Equal sharing and naming the fraction based on how you have equally shared the whole. Right, that brings us to the end of another lesson here with Wiskunde Juffie. Now, of course, we did some revision of equal sharing and fraction names, and so I want to thank you for joining me for this lesson and doing some revision with me. In the next lesson, we will be doing some more revision, moving on along our fraction topic. I'll see you there. If you enjoyed this lesson, don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. In other words, just click so that you never ever miss out on another video here on my channel.